First off, thank you everyone for joining us for today's webinar, Take Action and Boost Your Training Certification Enrollment in 2022. My name's Cody, I'm from Accreditation, and I'll be your host for today. If you're not familiar with Accreditation, we are the world's leading digital certificate and digital badging software. Over 1,500 leading organizations like Google, Slack, Sage, S&P Global, Skillsoft, and more trust us to issue their digital badges and certificates, and we issue millions of credentials each month. If you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A window, and that's accessible in the panel on the side or the bottom of your screen. I'll be monitoring those questions as we go, and if I don't get to one of your questions right away, don't worry. I'll take some time near the end of this webinar to answer as many of your questions as possible. Please note that this webinar is being recorded, and we'll send the recording out to you after this webinar is over. All right, so professionals today see a vital need to upskill as the workforce grows increasingly competitive. But to achieve this, many individuals are having to jump from platform to platform to get the skills they desire, all while managing their day-to-day job and life responsibilities. The negative impact of trying to manage it all is impeding learner engagement and learner experience. This webinar is intended to help professional certification providers motivate their learners and use digital credentials to increase demand and drive revenue. Let's jump in. First, what is the current state of demand for training? Professionals are turning to learning platforms in their millions. At the beginning of this year, 180 million active learners had registered on massive open online courses, also known as MOOCs, of which a third of those, 60 million, had joined in 2020 alone. And according to more recent reports, a further 40 million learners registered on at least one MOOC platform during 2021. To put that in perspective, that's since 2015, an increase in the number of active learners of about 500%. And we also see this reflected in our own learning providers. So over the past year, they increased from an average of, I think, 1.2 million credentials in the month of January to almost 2 million average digital credentials issued to this month. And that's another increase of about 67% in just under a year. So the numbers show that digital learning is rapidly becoming the most impactful and popular method of learning to pursue, in part motivated by the pandemic, but learners still struggle to remain engaged. And this is largely due to the distinct change in what learners expect from professional education. They're no longer interested in long-form programs, such as a graduate degree. Instead, learners want short-form courses that can be completed over a lunch break, maybe with a coffee or in between their existing work tasks. So why are learners so focused on short-form courses? Well, according to a study by the University of California, the average person gets about 10 minutes or 11 minutes, of uninterrupted work in any given stretch. So not only are we constantly interrupted, but once somebody's distracted, it can take as long as 25 minutes to return to the original task. As you might imagine, that makes it very difficult to take a long-form course. So with that in mind, what do learners want out of their upskilling and their reskilling? Well, professionals seeking learning opportunities want programs that are short form, affordable, and most importantly, they want programs that provide value. They want to improve their resume and employability with programs that are engaging and credentials that support them to advance the needle on their career and help their resumes stand out in a competitive job market. But they don't want to commit to college education. Since 2019, in-person undergraduate enrollment saw a decline of 14.1% due to rising costs of studies and college degrees being seen as less valuable. With tuition fees climbing above $10,000 for in-state residents and over $22,000 for out-of-state, it's no surprise that e-learning, with an average course price of about $177, has exploded in popularity. So how can issuers use this information to increase enrollment on their programs? Professional certification providers need to start embracing the request for microlearning. So let's define that, right? Microlearning is the process of taking complex or long-term programs and breaking them down into digestible, bite-sized modules. A micro lesson or micro session takes on average about 10 minutes to complete, and a micro learning course is typically made up of between 4 to 6 micro sessions. Why then is micro learning so popular, right? Not only does it meet the needs of learning around day-to-day responsibilities, but knowledge retention is shown to be much higher for learners enrolled in microlearning programs, up to 70 to 90% compared to about 15% of knowledge retained in a typical instructor-led session. For the issuer, microlearning reduces development costs by 50% and increases development speed up to 300%. And that's having a tremendous impact on growth. The global microlearning market was valued at 1.59 billion in 2020 and is projected to reach 4 billion by 2028. So how can issuers convey the value of their certification after making the switch to or offering microlearning programs? Some of that answer depends on what you're doing now to recognize achievement, right? Learning achievements are often recognized with physical certificates or more recently PDF certificates. And both are frequently used to represent completion of learning programs, but they don't effectively serve the recipient experience. For a start, a physical and PDF certificate restricts the space available for describing the outcome of a program, right? Let's say, as an example, a candidate that completes a course for Microsoft Excel receives a certificate to state that they are proficient in Excel, but what does that mean? The certificate isn't going to include skills they could demonstrate, or if knowledge has been gained through applied learning, or what the recipient is capable of. The recipient knows what skills they've achieved, but the hiring manager that's looking at their resume, the reason why they got that course in the first place, only has about 6 seconds to review their submitted resume or application. And they're not going to see that on a traditional certificate or a PDF. If the issuer delivers instead a certificate per micro session, it quickly increases in cost and becomes a time-consuming process for your administrators, which only gets worse as you scale your student numbers, right? And not only that, but recipients don't know what to do if they have a certificate for each micro session, right? PDFs are not supported on most social media platforms, and physical certificates are instantly received, so there's very little motivation to celebrate their latest achievement. Learners work hard for their career advancing credentials, and they want the opportunity to showcase their efforts rather than file it away in a drawer or on a hard drive where it's going to be forgotten. Issuers need to prevent unnecessary barriers then that prevent recipients from benefiting from their efforts, especially as it pertains to microlearning. An alternative, cost-effective option for recognizing achievement is to deliver digital credentials that are easy to share, take seconds to verify, and are fully portable. So for example, for each micro session completed, the learner could be awarded a digital badge as a micro credential that is issued on a dedicated credential page. And then those stack, and once the learner has completed the microlearning program, they're issued a final digital badge or a digital certificate that represents the end and culmination of their learning journey. So the use of micro-credentials provides motivation for learners through the process of gamification. They get regular opportunities to celebrate their achievements by sharing their digital credentials to social media in one click from the credential email or a dedicated credential page. The dedicated credential page, in addition, includes all the necessary information of what skills the recipient can demonstrate, including experience gained through applied testing, what scores they achieve for tests, and details of who the issuer is and what programs they offer. And the inclusion of skills tags also serves to improve the visibility of learning programs from a search engine perspective. But does that mean issuers are just swapping costs of physical or PDF certificates for the cost of implementing digital credentials? Well, short answer, no. Digital credentials are not a cost center. They're a way to directly drive revenue. So let's explore how that works. Professional certification providers that charge per course use digital credentials to highlight the next step in the program clearly for their learners. Direct links to the next micro session or microlearning course are included in the credential delivery email and on the dedicated credential page. And this increased visibility to the learning journey directly motivates learners to continue progressing. Additionally, once a physical PDF or certificate has been issued, it's out of the organization's control. With digital credentials, full control is retained by the issuer, including the ability to set expiration dates and revoke credentials where necessary. And that enables you to set a reasonable expiration date that encourages your learners to return and refresh their skills and knowledge, which of course is going to directly impact generated revenue that you have through those credential renewals. How does that work in practice, right? Once a digital credential is close to expiration, recipients receive an automated email notification. And then once an expiration date is passed, if it does, the credential is then updated with a banner to state that it can no longer be verified, and the recipient receives another email notification advising their credential is expired. The visible expiration of credentials provides further motivation for recipients to keep their career advancing certifications and skills up to date. In practice, if I shared my credential to LinkedIn and it gets expired, somebody who looks at my LinkedIn profile is then going to see an expired credential, and I have another reason to go and retake that certification course. So let's dive into shareability a little bit more. Right? As previously mentioned, traditional credentials and PDFs aren't readily shareable. There are additional steps that the recipients need to take to share their certificate to social media, and that reduces the engagement of credentials and means that you as an issuer miss out on a key benefit: authentic marketing. Authentic marketing, in short, is the process of harnessing the reach of your candidates to improve visibility for your organization, your programs, and your credentials. And I think Paulina, one of our providers, said it best, right? People don't look to the company to see that a product is good. They look to the customers to see that a product is good. So digital credentials then eliminate the complexity of sharing credentials. Recipients can share to social media platforms, including LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, from the credential page. You as an issuer can add a clear call to action button in credential delivery emails with a target social media platform that aligns the organization's marketing strategy. And recipients also have the option to embed their credential in their email signature or on a personal website. So what is the impact, right? I don't just like to talk about this stuff. I like to use statistics. So we have a few case study stats from our issuers that deliver digital credentials. And the first one is Scality. They're a leader in software-defined storage, right? And they switched to digital credentials because they had a 30-day lead time for delivering traditional paper credentials that wasn't supporting the professionalism of your program. Now, Scality's career advancing credentials are received instantly, and students are generally very eager to engage with their achievements. So as a result, they were able to scale their program by 400%. They went from 300 to 1,200 students. And because they were using digital credentials, they did that without creating any additional labor for their staff. Brunch Work, the company that Paulina, the person we quoted earlier, belongs to, is a leading provider of modern business education. And they started issuing digital credentials after they did an internal poll, and 85% of their customer base requested a digital certificate. So after launching, their LinkedIn page saw a 78% increase in monthly page views. So that was based on, or a spike that they attribute to, digital credentials. The recipients were thrilled to have a digital certificate that they could share, and at least half of their recipients regularly share their credentials to LinkedIn. And then finally, we have the International Association of Privacy Professionals, IAPP. They are the largest and most comprehensive global information privacy community and resource, and they were issuing physical certificates at an eye-watering $20 per certificate to deliver internationally. It was also a huge time sink. They had 4 certification team members spending 2 days each month preparing, posting, and managing all of their physical certificates. And the certificates themselves would often go missing en route to the recipient. After making the switch to digital credentials, IAPP was able to save a minimum of 50% in certificate costs and eliminate the time spent on sending them out. The move to Accredible allowed IAPP to free up staff time, reduce costs, deliver better customer service, manage certificate expiration, and increase their online visibility. So let's recap, right? How can you take action to attract new learners, boost enrollment, and boost your program revenue? Well, with digital credentials, you can leverage microlearning while still rewarding success, which unlocks a huge segment of those tens of millions of new learners looking for bite-sized modules. Automated processes like credential expiration give your learners incentives to keep credentials current and so increase your renewal revenue. And of course, shareability and the links back to your program encourage authentic marketing from your learners. Digital credentials are the key then to driving revenue, improving visibility, and reducing management time and costs, all while motivating your candidates to pursue further learning opportunities and empowering your recipients to celebrate their achievements. All right. Now we'll open things up to questions. I see a few in the chat here, but if you have a question you haven't asked, please post it in the Q&A window. I'll try to get to as many of your questions as possible, and I apologize in advance for paraphrasing any of your questions. The first one that I have here is, will there be a replay available? We are recording the session, and we will send out the recording to you after this webinar is over. That may not be until tomorrow, but you will receive a copy of the recording. All right, the next one in here, what if we already have software like this? How can we best increase demand? I think that sometimes depends on how much like Accredible your current vendor is. I like to say that we're a partner on your journey, and we have customer success experts that are going to be doing quarterly or yearly reviews with your team that help you identify or set or meet goals that you're putting in place to grow your program or increase the number of LinkedIn shares that you see. So increasing a program that already exists for digital credentials is going to depend on what software you're using and how you're already working with your provider in that sense. So for Accredible, it's really easy. For other platforms, I cannot make any promises. All right, next one here. Is a question from David. How can I use Accredible to gamify the L&D process in my department using custom badges? So we covered that briefly, but I'll call attention back to it. And thank you for asking this, David. The badges and the way that you set those up, the process that somebody goes through, the different steps that they take inside of that microlearning path are supremely important. My favorite example of this is one of our customers, McGraw-Hill. So McGraw-Hill have different levels for learning. So they might have something like an Excel course that has 4 stages. And after you complete stage 1 and take your assessment, you get a badge that says you are a level 1 completion learner. And you have other levels beyond that. And Accredible actually has a native tool in place that will show you how learners have progressed through each one of those, and if you're getting a drop off between level 1 and level 2. So in the way that we produce those are automatically going to sort of gamify the system when you put different achievement levels in place for your learners, and then differentiate those levels based on the level of achievement that they achieve. A little bit repetitious there, but it is all going to be sort of part of the parcel and package that Accredible has, and our credential experts have helped different organizations to architect that at a bunch of different industries. So we can help you figure out exactly how that should work for your learners. So thank you again, David. A question here from Bob. Do you have recommendations on accrediting the programs we develop? So especially with a microlearning model. If you're looking for accreditation from a third party, let's say for something like a college course, we're not going to set out exactly who you should talk to. Our main focus and goal is always on providing the best experience for you and your learners. So we are the vehicle, the mode that allows you to issue those credentials and make them successful at multiple levels. But we are not going to force you to use one accreditation body or another in order to get your programs accredited. All right, another question here from an anonymous attendee this time. Sorry, this one isn't so much of a question. I love the fact that my credential recipients don't have to establish an Accredible account, which they do with a provider I will not name during the webinar, which is ridiculous. Please don't change this. Yeah, this is a great call out. Some other pieces of technology that exist inside of this space require any person who receives a credential to create a profile on their platform. Accredible doesn't do that, right? So we want to remove barriers to sharing and engagement with credentials. And that means that if I complete a course with McGraw-Hill and I get my Excel certificate, the email that I'm getting from them, or a link that's just hard baked into their platform, which we can also do with you, automatically logs me in to the credential itself. And I have the ability then to share that to social media. And I only have to sort of verify my email address and go through additional steps if I want to do something like change my name from C. Gondike to Cody Gondike on that credential. For other platforms, you will have to create a profile and log into that profile, and then there's additional steps that sometimes occur where a student, a learner, might have to give all of their social profiles access to that account that they have with the digital credential provider, which we consider to be a very poor experience. And it's something that we will not do and not force you into. So we're all about streamlining the process and encouraging those shares rather than forcing you and your learners to create an Accredible account and then give that account permissions to your social feeds. All right. Thank you again. I don't know who that was, but really appreciate the call out. Another one here from Christine. Could you explain stacking certificates? So stacking credentials or stacking certificates is really a question of the program itself, but at its base, when we talk about stacking credentials, it is something that builds towards a larger goal. And that can be a direct path or an indirect path. So when we think about something like what I was talking about with McGraw-Hill, let's reuse the same idea. And it is Excel level 1, 2, 3, and 4. So those certificates stack on top of each other, and 1, 2, and 3 get you to 4. So instead, we can sometimes stack in a horizontal fashion or from different courses. So let's say McGraw-Hill was instead offering a Microsoft Office competency certificate. And to earn that competency certificate, you had to take on at least one course from 3 different modules. So instead of taking Excel 1, 2, and 3 to get another certificate, you take Excel 1 and Microsoft Word 1 and Microsoft Outlook 1, and that builds towards a different stacked credential. All right. Another anonymous question, is this blockchain or similar technology? By default, Accredible hosts our credentials with the equivalent of national level bank security. And what do I mean by that? It is as hard to hack into or change information on or falsify an Accredible credential as it would be for you to hack into a national level bank. We additionally offer any issuer the ability to record credentials to the blockchain. And there's a longer explanation that I can give to blockchain, but I'll try and keep it short. And that is, for somebody to hack a blockchain credential, they have to simultaneously hack into 51% of all of the distributed records of the blockchain. So they basically have to hack into something like 7,000 different computers and nodes and records all across the world simultaneously and change something and not get caught changing that thing in order to successfully falsify something that's been recorded to the blockchain. So by default, it's as difficult to falsify an Accredible credential as it would be to hack a national level bank. And you have the open option of recording that to the blockchain, which is effectively impossible to falsify. All right, another question here from Jacqueline. Can you discuss your white label program and if you have an affiliate program? Great question. So white labeling at Accredible is a really powerful tool. So somebody like Black Hat or Google Cloud have our white label package and program. And in having that, they set up their credentials so that when somebody views a credential or looks at the credential overview, they feel like they've never left the site of the issuer. So they feel like they're still in Google Cloud's domain. They feel like they're still in Black Hat's website. And they have a custom address for that, a custom URL. And we can even go further than that to integrate with different pieces of software or different internal software that somebody might have, so that I'm already logged into my Moodle account or my Google Learning account. I shouldn't have to go to a different page or have a different login to be able to access my credential. So we make it possible to effectively give seamless experience using SSO links, so that when somebody's already logged into their existing platform that's coming from whatever issuer, they see their credential and they see and have access to it because of the existing login and inside of the existing site. All right, another anonymous attendee asks, do you also help with content delivery and learner outcome? We generally are not setting the subject for your courses, right? We're not drafting the content or the lessons so much as we are helping you to achieve the outcomes you want for yourselves and for your learners. So for that, there's a larger question here on what our customer success team can help you with. And I can put you in touch with them or a member of our team that would be able to help you with that. But for the individual that asked that question anonymously, I would ask you to just send me a chat privately with your email address or another piece of contact information, so that I can put you in touch with somebody who will have a better explanation for you on what you're looking for. All right. Another question from Christine: what's the process for transferring existing issued credentials from another platform to you? So even if the credentials don't exist on another platform, Accredible, in the way that we create credentials, we can do something as simple as a CSV import with all the appropriate information to get you and your learner set up, right? If you have things that were issued from 2014 on, let's say, and you have a table with learner names, learner emails, and the issuance date, and maybe the course name, you would be able to upload that into Accredible and have, let's say, 50,000 historical records and credentials get published in the snap of a finger. And in doing so, import all of those previous credentials into the Accredible platform. And then, of course, each one of them is hosted online in perpetuity. And as part of that credential upload and publishing process, you could also make sure that those backdated credentials are published to or published on the blockchain so that they have blockchain security. So any feature that exists for, let's say, new credentials is something that you can bake into transferred existing credentials that you might have. And of course, new credentials and stuff going forward, you also get the benefit of credential automation. So whatever tool you're using, you of course have access to our API, which you can use to push information to the Accredible platform and also publish credentials that you are interested in having go live. So thank you, Christine. I don't know if that was a very clear answer or not, so please feel free to ask a follow-up on that one. All right, more questions here. So I have one from, sorry, John, sorry, that's not a question. John just wanted to thank us for removing barriers and not requiring users to create profiles. We appreciate it, John, and I would love to be able to quote you on that. So let me know if I can. Another one from Catherine. Catherine asks, what if our commercial business ends? Do the students still see their certificates? That is a fantastic question. And it's really relevant, right? When it comes to a business or even a higher education institution, when one of those things closes, what happens to the records of the people who went to that institution, got learning from that organization? With something like Accredible, the credentials that exist will exist in perpetuity. It doesn't matter if, let's say, the Royal Institute for Learning goes under and doesn't operate for another year. Any digital credentials that were published through Accredible will exist forever. And the ability to verify that stuff or look at appended information like transcripts will exist in perpetuity. So one of the main benefits of digital credentials really is that the credential itself is an immutable record. It is going to exist. And honestly, it could outlast both an organization that's using Accredible and potentially Accredible itself if Accredible is no longer around in 150 years. So regardless of what happens to you or to us, your credentials published through Accredible are going to last. All right, thank you for that, Catherine. Let's see, another one from Christine, follow-up to the earlier question on transferring existing issued credentials from another platform to us. And so the question this time is, how would the recipient experience the transfer? That is honestly up to you in some ways, but I'll talk about what we can offer, what we can provide to make that seem or feel like a smoother transition for your learners. When you create credentials, regardless of whether they're backdated or not, you have the ability to determine whether or not a notice goes out to the learner when it's getting published. By default, we want that notice to go out. We want them to receive an email. We want them to engage with the credential. And when I say we, I'm talking about both you and Accredible, right? We want that learner to benefit from having that digital credential. When it comes to backdated credentials, you have the ability to suppress that email. But I think you only want to do something like that if you do not have a vested interest in having your older recipients share credentials that they may have gotten in the past. And for that, I really think that no matter when somebody received a credential or where else it might have come from, you want the credential that your learner is showing off to be the best possible version of that. So you have a vested interest, I would say, in having historical learners get an email from Accredible that would be automated, telling them that they have a new record of their old achievement. And inside of that email, you control the messaging and of course get to say whatever you want to. So you could encourage them inside of that to add your certificate to LinkedIn and honestly add value potentially to how they're sharing that, and say that since 2014, when I first got this credential, the credential helped me to get X, Y, and Z job, and that's why I enjoyed this course, right? So I really think that the historical credentials and publishing those and getting an email notification out to those learners is something that can create additional value for you in trying to capture, especially the learner stories of what they've been able to use your credential for in the years since they first earned it. All right. Outside of that experience, once they have that credential through Accredible, they're getting the same experience as a new recipient, so they'll get their single sign-on, they'll be able to access their credential without having to create a profile, every benefit that we already talked about. All right, thank you again, Christine, great questions. So we are definitely over time here, and the rest of the questions that I'm seeing are a little bit outside of the scope of the webinar. So if you do have a question that I wasn't able to get to, someone on our team will reach out to you after the webinar is over. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. And remember, you can get in touch with our credential experts anytime from our website, that's accredible.com, or you can sign up for a trial account of our software. And that trial is going to give you everything that you need to test this out. We've helped hundreds of organizations like Google and Slack, Sailor Academy, and Skillsoft to grow their digital credential programs. So I'm confident that we can help you. Thank you again, everyone, and have a great day.